No one could have imagined that in the not-too-distant future, even breathing a mouthful of fresh air would be deadly. The Earth was now filled with lethal toxic gas. Whether human or animal, anyone who inhaled it would die violently within 3 minutes. The once bustling streets had turned into silent ruins. The few remaining survivors could only hide underground, struggling to stay alive. However, they had not given up hope. They pooled their resources and established a research institute with the goal of finding a way to eliminate the toxic gas. This might be humanity's last chance to save civilization. The woman before us is named Clara. She is a field operative for the institute and has worked at an underground monitoring station for several years. Her daily job is to record data related to the toxic gas. Although they still don't know where the gas came from, it is dissipating, albeit extremely slowly. According to their current models, humans would be able to return to the surface and breathe freely in about 30 years. It was this distant hope that had sustained Clara through her monotonous underground life. While looking at the map on her screen one day, Clara saw that many of her colleagues were still performing the same duties as her. That night, as she was reading, her computer suddenly chimed with a notification. Headquarters had sent a message reminding her to collect the incoming supply drop. The next morning, Clara put on her heavy hazmat suit, grabbed her weapon, and headed to the surface to retrieve the supplies. Even though she was mentally prepared, the scene still weighed heavily on her heart. The air was thick with grayish fog, and the ruined streets reeked of death. She quickened her pace, eager to leave this despairing sight behind. The supply drone arrived on time, but its drop point was off target. Clara had no choice but to jump into the water. Fortunately, the box was well sealed and the food inside remained dry. The supplies would last her at least half a month. Although she didn't have to worry about food or warmth underground, the psychological isolation was something few could endure. The monotonous days repeated until one day her computer suddenly showed a network disconnection. This meant she had completely lost contact with headquarters. Without future supply drops, she would eventually starve to death in the bunker. Clara thought of her colleague at the neighboring signal station. Maybe she could contact headquarters through them. She gathered her hazmat gear and weapons, then stepped out of her underground fortress once again. This time, she also brought her most trusted robotic companion, a drone shaped like an eagle. She crossed the toxic, fog-filled abandoned city and finally reached the neighboring signal station. When she lifted the bunker's iron door, she found the interior flooded with wastewater. A bad feeling rose in her chest. She quickly climbed to the top of the signal tower and discovered her colleague slumped motionless over the desk. He was already dead. On the table lay a suicide note. It turned out that after returning from an outing, the colleague had found his own bunker flooded. He tried to contact headquarters for rescue but received no response. In the end, unable to hold on any longer, he chose to end his own life. Clara picked up the radio to call headquarters, but the screen showed signal unavailable. Cold sweat broke out on her forehead. Not just because of her colleague's death, but because she now had no idea what to do next. Staying put meant certain death. She checked her map and saw that headquarters was not far away. Sensing something was wrong, Clara decided to travel there on foot to investigate. She found a car, rested for the night, then continued her journey the next day with the mechanical eagle drone always guarding her. She knew that in this world, toxic gas wasn't the only thing that could kill you. She vaguely spotted other survivors ahead and cautiously avoided them. After a long, arduous journey, she finally reached the Institute's headquarters. Using her ID, she entered the base. The filtration system here was far more advanced. She could remove her gas mask and breathe freely. To her shock, the base was completely deserted. All her colleagues seemed to have vanished into thin air. After searching for clues, she found an email on a computer sent to all departments. Due to severe material shortages, the base had decided to terminate the research project. Everyone was to pack up and evacuate headquarters. However, Clara had never received this notice. She felt abandoned by the very organization she had served. No wonder the network had suddenly gone down and the radio signal had disappeared days earlier. As Clara was deep in thought, 3 survivors suddenly burst into the base. She reacted instantly, taking down 2 of them. The last one immediately dropped to his knees. Clara checked her map. The nearest shelter was a month's walk away, and she only had enough supplies for 3 days. She decided it would be best to return to her own bunker first. At least the stockpile there could sustain her for another 10 days to half a month. But on the way back, her eagle drone suddenly malfunctioned. Several survivors appeared and knocked Clara unconscious. When she woke up, a heavily muscled man stood before her. His name was Hank. He had applied to join the institute several times, but was always rejected. Since then, he had survived on the surface by scavenging garbage. Clara hurriedly explained that the institute had concentrated resources to save the world. Hank scoffed at her words. The empty base was the best proof, he said. They were clearly just looking for excuses to hoard the best resources. With that, Hank raised his pistol and demanded Clara hand over her valuable drone. She refused, claiming the eagle was out on patrol and wouldn't return anytime soon. Hank laughed and said he had plenty plenty of time. What he didn't know was that Clara had already secretly freed herself from her handcuffs. When the guard wasn't looking, she grabbed a chair and smashed him with it, then swiftly took his weapon and gas mask. She ran to the base entrance, where she saw a woman sharpening a knife. Clara immediately stabbed her with a dagger. The noise alerted nearby guards. She opened fire without hesitation. Just as she was about to be overwhelmed, her Eagle drone arrived in time to provide cover. As Clara moved forward, another guard appeared behind her. Before he could subdue her, a gunshot rang out and the guard fell. Confused, Clara looked up and saw that the shooter was a woman who looked exactly like herself. There was no time to think. They had to escape first. The two women rushed into a room. Clara was suddenly grabbed by a guard. Despite her limited strength, she was pinned down. At the critical moment, she ripped off the guard's gas mask and he collapsed, dead, instantly. Meanwhile, the mysterious woman was locked in fierce combat. Hank stood out prominently among the crowd. Clara's gun was empty, so she picked up a wooden stick and stabbed it hard into Hank's abdomen. The big man roared in pain. Knowing he was finished, he angrily destroyed the drone's controller in revenge. Clara picked up a pistol, intending to finish him off, but ultimately held back. Hank was just another poor soul struggling to survive in this forsaken world. After eliminating the enemies, Clara urgently asked the woman who she was and why they looked identical. The woman calmly replied, "We are both clones, products of the Institute's Clara project." Clara refused to believe it. She had grown up in the Institute and worked in the underground bunker for 10 years. How could those memories be fake? The clone's expression remained cold as she continued. Clara's real memories were nothing more than code implanted through gene editing. The clone had found encrypted files about 2 failed projects at headquarters. The recent Clara project was actually about mass-producing clones to carry out dangerous or tedious tasks in place of real humans. As survivor numbers dwindled, headquarters decided to terminate the project, abandoning the existing clones. This female clone could not accept being discarded. She vowed to find the Institute's human elites and demand answers. She had been searching for them and believed that high-altitude areas were free of toxic gas. After ruling out several previously visited highlands, she concluded that this abandoned high-rise building and the nearby mountain peak were the most likely locations for the Institute's new base. Clara, equally unsettled, decided to join her. The two first went to the nearest high-rise. As soon as they entered, a loud broadcast sounded. The building had already been occupied by survivors. The leader recognized the two clones immediately. He said he had established a camp in an old mine where no gas masks were needed and supplies were plentiful. He invited them to join. The clone, who deeply hated humans, pretended to agree. When the guards came to escort them, she shot them dead on the spot. This act stirred up a hornet's nest. The building's main gate slammed shut automatically. Clara hid behind a wall as a grenade flew toward her. She caught it and threw it out the window. A fierce firefight broke out. In the chaos, a guard took Clara hostage and demanded the clone drop her weapon. The clone responded by taking another guard hostage. They agreed to exchange hostages, but the clone's hatred boiled over and she opened fire anyway. Another intense battle followed. Although the two managed to escape, the clone was badly wounded. Her protective suit was soon soaked with blood. Clara helped her along, but as they neared the mountain peak, the clone collapsed from exhaustion. Her final wish was to see the Institute's new base. Clara nodded and carried on alone to the summit. What she found was only more toxic fog and desolate wasteland, not a single survivor in sight. Holding back her grief, she returned to the clone and gently comforted her, saying she had seen many surviving humans on the mountaintop. There was no toxic gas there, and children were happily playing. The clone listened with immense relief and peacefully closed her eyes. Even though she was a clone, she deeply wished for the world to return to beauty. Clara didn't want to disappoint her, so she told this kind-hearted lie. Now alone once again, Clara dragged her exhausted body back to her original shelter, only to find the entrance had been forced open. Inside, all her stored supplies had been destroyed. Sitting on the sofa was Hank, the man she had spared earlier. Realizing she would not survive more than a week, Clara let out a despairing roar and finally pulled the trigger.